The Western pro-life movement cares about protecting young mothers and their children from harm. But historically, that's also what the law is designed to do. Will those laws be restored? Yes, they will. And we will show you how. On this edition of Life Matters, with your host, Brian Johnston. Our host, Brian Johnston, has been a teacher at every academic level, from adult education and junior college down through high school, junior high, and even 5th and 6th grade. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as chairman of the California Pro-Life Council. He is an author and lecturer, a film producer, and commentator. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back to Life Matters, your program on life, on culture, and the very real battle of ideas. I'm at a National Right to Life board meeting, and so you may hear some voices in the background, but I wanted to take some time with a guest we've had before, and that's Karen Cross. Karen was the executive director of West Virginians for Life and is now the PAC director for the National Right to Life Committee. And she brings some years of experience and insight into the political aspect of the pro-life debate. Karen, it's always good to have you on.
It's great to be with you.
So tell us now, we're looking again at an election year, and there's certain aspects of the pro-life issue that the dominant media culture doesn't examine. They want to paint us a certain way, but there's some very real political implications to the pro-life vote. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, first, what I'd like to start out by saying is they would like people to believe that the pro-life issue hurts a candidate. And yet, poll after poll after poll, election after election, we find that the majority of people, most people, that there's actually an advantage to being the pro-life candidate. Mm-hmm. And even what we found in 2016 was that 49% of all voters considered the issue of abortion when they voted, which means only that 51% did not. But the ones who did, 31% of those supported the pro-life candidate, while 18% supported the pro-choice candidate, with a net gain of 13 points for the pro-life candidate, mm-hmm. which on the presidential side gave us states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, those close states. So in a narrow election, the pro-life candidate wins. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we find in polling is that coming out of a primary, generally, now you guys have a top two system in California, mm-hmm. so that regardless of party, whoever the top two vote getters win the primary and go on to the general. But what we find is that generally in a primary, because about 75% of Republicans are pro-life and about 25% of Democrats are pro-life, generally you get, in a regular primary, you get a pro-life Republican versus a pro-abortion Democrat. Right. Now, independents, interestingly, are about 50-50. They don't really generally have strong opinions on life. They usually are fiscal conservatives. Mm-hmm. But because of that, we found that generally a lot of times, and you'll probably have this in many of the California races, where you actually have a pro-life Republican being challenged by or opposing a pro-abortion Democrat. Right. And what I mean by that is generally with the Republicans, what you're going to find is somebody who would vote, the opportunities they'll have to vote on in Congress are the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, mm-hmm. for instance. That is a bill that says no abortion after 20 weeks when the unborn child can feel excruciating pain during various late abortion methods. Or the Republican or the pro-life candidate would oppose using our tax dollars to pay for abortion. Right. Now, generally what you have with pro-abortion candidate, and usually it's the Democrat. There are only two pro-life Democrats in the entire Congress. Wow. This 115th Congress, two. So generally what we find is the Democrat is pro-abortion, supporting using tax dollars to pay for abortion, mm-hmm. and supporting abortion on demand for any reason, even in late abortion. Yeah. And most people don't support that position. Right. So
when the abortion issue is properly understood in terms of real life, rather than just calling it choice in this vague reference to women's rights, when the actual process of human abortion is discussed, and the reasons are, to be honest, the lack of reasons, because that's what choice means, abortion for any reason, at any time, throughout pregnancy and for no reason. Mm-hmm. That's what it means, just for choice. And most Americans really aren't comfortable with that. And
Absolutely.
so our job is to discuss that and discuss who are the good candidates that want to bring some protection for that child.
Right, absolutely. And to be willing to talk to your friends and neighbors about the candidates, find out the candidates' actual positions.
Yes.
For instance, in Pennsylvania 18, there was a congressional district just recently that had a candidate who, because he was Catholic, people thought that meant he was pro-life. And many times in the media, the media talk about Connor Lamb, a Democrat who's pro-life, pro-gun,
Right.
and so on.
That special election, yeah.
Yes, it was a special election. The Democrat actually appears that he narrowly won that with about 600 votes, about 0.3%, that he may have won this by. Interestingly, many of the media were saying this is the kind of Democrat they should have in these districts that are the swing districts or close races. But they kept referring to him as pro-life. And now, sadly, he is not pro-life. He never really claimed to be pro-life. He would just talk about being Catholic.
Right.
And so the assumption by many people was that he was pro-life. But when he was finally pinned down, he admitted that he would always support a woman's right to choose, that it is the law of the land, and that he would not even support the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which is after 20 weeks when the baby can feel pain, saying that we would not do abortions at that point, where most people, even many people who consider themselves pro-choice, don't support late abortion after the baby can feel pain.
That's right.
So if he does end up winning, he will have a pro-abortion voting record. And sadly, many of the people who voted for him mistook his being Catholic. So it's very important to find out the actual positions, why it's important for people to be in touch with the National Right to Life or
state affiliates, with any of the state affiliates. California, it's the California Pro-Life Council. But wherever you are in the nation, you have a state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee. And we're committed to the very specific laws. We're not committed to vague concepts. We're not committed to the feelings you have, or maybe, although your church may teach good things, just using your church's name isn't enough to save that child's life. We're talking about, will the laws protect that child?
Absolutely.
And so we need to hold accountable candidates specifically on the laws. You only elect a candidate for one reason, not because they speak well, although a lot of people think that's it, not because they look good.
Absolutely.
What decisions will they make? Yes or no? If you don't know what that's going to be, you need to find out. And that's what we do in the Right to Life movement and through National Right to Life.
Yeah, actually in 2018, we have a number of the Democrats who are considered somewhat centrist or moderate. They're referred to often in the media as moderate. They are incumbents. They claim to be pro-life, and yet their voting records range from around 15% to 40% in the 115th Congress. That is not passing by any means for those of us who looked for, 100% out of our candidates. We're talking about human lives, babies, people who are vulnerable, and what they say is not, like you said, that's not what matters, what they actually do. Their vote is their fruit. That is what we're looking for, is their vote. And I've often said, I would rather have someone who considers themselves pro-choice, who votes with us 100%, than somebody who says they're pro-life and votes with us 20% of the time.
Yeah. And, Planned Parenthood wouldn't like that person calling themselves pro-choice and then voting pro-life. They use the same principle.
Absolutely.
They live in reality. And their reality, though, is that human life is cheap. Our reality is what our founders wrote, and that is human life is unique, that it's a gift, and it's a gift from your Creator, and the job of government is to protect that right. And so if someone's running for a government post, they need to understand the role of government is to protect the right to life. And your job as a pro-life individual is to remember that, to keep that first and foremost, work with other pro-life citizens to make sure you're electing people at every level of government. We talk about Congress a lot on this program. It's so important. But it goes all the way down to school board and city council and county supervisor, and then, of course, your state legislature, because someday and someday soon, we're going to see the overturn of Roe. You know, when a Supreme Court justice who didn't always vote with us, but she did in the Casey decision, Sandra Day O'Connor, she commented specifically when she said that Roe v. Wade has no foundation in law or logic. It's on a collision course with itself. That is true. And so we're going to see Roe overturned, and we have to be ready on the state level. You have to be ready with lawmakers that will then act to protect those that can't protect themselves.
Absolutely. And coming from the political director in me, a lot of those state senators do end up running for Congress and moving on. So it's important that at every level we're electing people. So even in your city councils, because city councilmen often run for the state assembly.
That's right.
And then so those in the state legislature often run for Congress. So at every level, local circuit judges or any level, it's important to try to find pro-life people to represent that position so that when they do move up the ladder, that we have pro-life people in place and pro-life people who have already been held accountable so that we know what they'll do when it comes time.
That's right. You're listening to Life Matters, your program on the right to life, on culture, and this very real battle of ideas. We're going to be right back after this, and we're visiting with Karen Cross, Political Director for the National Right to Life Committee.
Life Matters continues after this.
This is an important update on Senate Bill 320. Senate Bill 320 would mandate that in California state colleges and universities, young women be given RU-486, the abortifacient drug. This is not a morning after pill. This drug is only taken when the woman knows that she's pregnant and the child is well along. It attacks the woman's body first by preventing it from giving any more nutrition to that child. Only then does the child die, and it results in a spontaneous miscarriage when that young woman can least control the situation. She sees the baby. She sees the clots of blood that come. It's extremely unpleasant. Once a woman has had this, she does not want another one, but your tax money would pay for it. Ask your state senators to vote no on Senate Bill 320.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters, your program on the right to life, on culture, and the very real battle of ideas. And I'm back in Washington, D.C. We're just wrapping up a National Right to Life board meeting. We have 58 members of the Board of National Right to Life, one from every state, and then 8 at large. And it's a deliberative body. It's rather entertaining at times because you have people from across the nation. It's a little bit like the U.S. Senate. And very, very powerfully motivated individuals. And it's really rather entertaining to come to a National Right to Life board meeting. And it's always educational. I'm privileged right now to be talking to the director of the political arm of National Right to Life. And that's Karen Cross, who has served for years in West Virginia. She learned the pro-life movement there and how it applies to politics in West Virginia. And we're very blessed and pleased to have her here in Washington, working with the National Right to Life Committee, PAC, and all of our political endeavors. Well, Karen, we were talking about some of the things that sometimes pro-life folks at election time, as passionate as we are, and we need to be involved in policy, our first part of the program, talked about that. The right to life is a policy statement. Mm-hmm. As much as we care about babies, and most of us are also involved in crisis pregnancy centers, helping them, but the right to life is a policy statement. Unless we understand that, we will never win. So we need to be involved in elections, but right now I want to talk about sometimes there's mistakes that pro-life folks can make, well-meaning folks, and we need to be aware of them so we don't keep making them. What are they?
Well, I just want to add to something you just said.
Yes.
Because I know that there are a lot of people who are uncomfortable with getting involved in politics. And in my personal life, the first thing I said when I got involved in the movement to help set up a crisis pregnancy center, we called it back then, back in the 80s, was that I'll do anything at all to help women and their babies. Just don't ask me to get involved in politics. Yeah, that didn't work out so well for me. I think God had a different plan. But the point is, as I got involved in the movement, began meeting women who had, for instance, been lied to at abortion clinics, I remember thinking, it should be illegal to lie to women. We should have a law that says women have the right to know. And so I started trying to help pass a law in the state, and we kept getting blocked by one particular senator. And I knew that if we could pass this law saying that women had to have factual information before they made this major decision, that we would save lives. And in fact, we know that we save lives. The Hyde Amendment alone, one piece of federal legislation, imperfect as it is, has saved 2 million people to date.
Wow.
2 million people are alive today for one piece of legislation. In South Carolina, where they are able to track the people saved based on pro-life legislation, 161,000 people are alive today because of the legislation they have passed. So I knew it was important to pass pro-life legislation, and I thought, if we could just get rid of her, the senator who was blocking the legislation, that maybe we could go on to pass this legislation. And we organized in her district, and lo and behold, the almighty chair of Finance, Senator Jay Spears, lost her election. We were able to go on and pass this legislation, and we do know that hundreds of people are alive today because of that one simple bill that was passed. So I fell in love with politics at that point because I believe it's a ministry to the unborn.
Yes.
Actually, political action is a ministry to the unborn and their mothers and their families.
That's right.
And because of the lives that are saved through the legislation passed once they get into office. So what we as pro-lifers need to be sure of, that in our zeal to protect life, we don't do things that would cause a pro-life candidate to lose.
Yes.
One of the things that some people do is they fall in love with their candidate. And it's fine to fall in love with your candidate and do everything you can to get your candidate elected, say in the primary.
Right.
But if your candidate loses and another pro-life candidate is there who could be elected, it's important that you don't take your toys and go home and say, I'm not in this anymore.
It isn't about personalities.
No, it's not.
This cause is too important, especially because many people will be hearing this before their primaries. So do work for your favorite candidate, but don't stop there.
Right. If your candidate loses, it's important to find the candidate who can protect life and work for them in the general. They may be imperfect, but if they're running against somebody who is a hardcore pro-abortion, we will save lives with the votes that they will cast.
Yes.
Many people believe that theirs is the true pro-life candidate and the only real pro-life candidate in the race, and then they bash other pro-life candidates. So if their candidate doesn't win, it weakens enthusiasm for the candidate who does ultimately win the primary.
Right.
And then it makes it harder for that person to win the general. And this might be breaking news, but it's not all about winning the primary.
Yep.
It's ultimately about winning the general.
Yes.
Because winning the primary, but not the general, does nothing for the babies.
That's right.
It's important, for instance, to have a candidate who can win in November in the primary so that they can do the things, they can take action to save lives, whether it be the elderly, those who are disabled, or unborn and their mothers.
That's right. And many pro-lifers, if you're listening to our program, you know the right to life isn't just about babies. We all love babies. But it's about protecting the lives of human beings that can't protect themselves. And these other issues now are very much in the forefront and are very much, they've always been a part of national right to life. But not every pro-lifer fully understands that the laws are changing. And we have to protect those that can't protect themselves.
Absolutely. Now, here's another thing that I hear this often. Some pro-lifers expect the candidate to sound like a chapter chairperson. And while they're pro-life, they may not necessarily be eloquent about talking about the killing of unborn children. So it's important for us to work with the candidate in the ways that we can to educate them, but to understand that just because they aren't eloquent about the issue doesn't mean they won't do the right thing that comes time to vote. And there are many people who have 100% records then who aren't eloquent about speaking and knowing our lingo.
Yeah, that's right. And I've seen it many times. So we need to work with them, we need to help educate them, and we need to be somewhat forgiving. If they're willing to give you the vote, again, ultimately, it isn't about what people say, it's about what they do. And if someone is going to vote for life, that's your starting point. You can continue to educate them, but don't abandon them if they misspeak or don't quite get little nuances. You can still work with them if they're pro-life.
Absolutely. Now, another issue that we run into sometimes is that some will expect the candidate to make abortion a top issue in the campaign. That could actually cause this candidate to lose his election. There are a lot of concerns. Now, while we understand that this is my priority, and it should be everyone's priority to protect unborn children, but a lot of people are looking at jobs and the economy and other issues. In 2016, as I mentioned earlier, 49% of people considered this issue when they voted. That means 51% didn't. So this candidate has to be out there talking about the issues that concern everyone: education, jobs, taxes, all of that. And in some places in the country, it's more important for them to be pro-life and not to back down on the issue when they're confronted with it, but to quietly share with those people who care about the issue that they're pro-life, because otherwise they're letting people know who might have voted for them their position on abortion, and then they may lose votes. We're not asking for them to be deceitful, just smart.
That's right. There's many issues in every political campaign, and we have to respect that. We have to understand that candidate has an obligation. They're going to represent every citizen in that district. So they have an obligation to not just be single issue as a candidate. They just need to be right on the pro-life issue. It's your job as a pro-life citizen to make sure that the pro-lifers then vote for them. You should be talking about them to your friends. Don't expect them to always have to be playing your song.
Now, one other one that's a little bit controversial: voting for a third-party candidate who has no chance of winning. There have been times, real situations that have happened where we've lost Senate races because the third-party candidate claimed to be the true pro-lifer and skimmed enough votes off of the actual pro-lifer who could win to allow the pro-abortion candidate to win. For instance, in Minnesota, when Norm Coleman lost to Al Franken. Al Franken was not a pro-life candidate. Has not ever voted once pro-life. I mean, he voted against Paying Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, voted against no taxpayer funding for abortion. He's voted in every opportunity he had against life.
Life Matters continues after this.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I was very excited when I heard about LifeFest Film Festival. LifeFest is the film festival dedicated to showcasing films that affirm the intrinsic worth of innocent human life and the profound significance of each life. One seemingly insignificant person can in fact change the whole world in which he or she lives. That one singular life ends up being of vital importance. I'm so glad to hear that you are cherishing that in this film festival and are committed to artfully and creatively protect the lives of those who can't possibly promote themselves.
Life Film Fest is dedicated to bring the message of life to Hollywood and to our culture. Go to lifefilmfest.com and get your tickets now. That's lifefilmfest.com.
Find out about the exciting cultural change impacting Hollywood. Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're talking to Karen Cross, Political Director for the National Right to Life Committee. And right now we're talking about how you can make some mistakes in your pro-life political effort, and specifically how having a third-party candidate, supporting that candidate, can really hurt the good guy. That's how Al Franken became a U.S. Senator?
Yes. Norm Coleman and Al Franken were in a
extremely tight race.
Very tight race. It came down to a few hundred votes out of millions cast. And unfortunately, the third-party candidate who ran as the true pro-lifer pulled about 16 points away.
My word.
And so all we needed was about not even 1 percentage point. It was one vote out of every 13 precincts that we needed to win that Senate race. And at this moment, right now, the way our Senate is, we only have 49 true pro-life votes in the U.S. Senate. We can't get to that magical 50 in which the vice president can break the tie.
Right.
So this election year is very, very important that we pick up some Senate seats.
Yes.
So that we can. But had Norm Coleman still been in instead of Al Franken, who was recently,
Yeah.
he's not in any longer. He's now been replaced with Tina Smith, who's a
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood, former vice president of Planned Parenthood and lobbyist.
So we're talking in spring of 2018.
18.
But on this one point, I want to remind folks who go back to remember, you would never even know who Bill Clinton was if there had not been a third-party candidate in that general election. And in fact, I forget his name now. Now he's a footnote to history. But it's because of that third-party candidate, a man with large ears from Texas, who did not like George H.W. Bush and so wanted to ruin his candidacy, and he did. That created the Clinton legacy. So not only did Bill Clinton get 8 years, but then all of the implications of Mrs. Clinton came out of that third-party candidacy, which took votes away from the candidate who should have run. That was, Ross Perot. So go back in your history, remember that, and learn from those lessons. We want to play to win.
Right. Now, one thing, we've talked about some of the things you can do to cause a pro-life candidate to lose, but let's just focus just for a minute on how you can help them win.
Yes.
So educate yourselves. First and foremost, get yourself educated on this issue. Go to nationalrighttolifenews.org and get subscribed. Get the alerts,
Updates,
those sorts of things. But educate yourselves, educate your friends and family. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your pro-life friends and family and church friends are registered to vote. Get on social media, Facebook, Twitter. These are great ways to reach a lot of people, your friends, a very inexpensive and quick way to reach a lot of people. Share, like National Right to Life's page and your state affiliates page, and like them so that you get their alerts, and then you share those alerts with your friends. There are just some simple things like the social networking tools and getting connected with your state affiliate as well as National Right to Life. Join with us, and we can all together make a difference.
That's right. And in nearly every community, there is a Right to Life chapter. And if not, why don't you consider starting one? You work with people, I strongly recommend, work with people who just aren't people from your church. There tends to be a tendency for Christian folks to slide only with folks. They get together with people from their church. But if you're going to impact your community, make sure you're working with other pro-lifers that maybe you don't have much else in common with, but they do want to protect the lives of the unborn. That's how we're going to win. If we're a team in a community, you can have tremendous impact. We want to urge you to do that. And again, it's been a pleasure to talk to Karen Cross, Political Director for the National Right to Life Committee. And Karen, we hope to have you back again soon.
I'd be glad to. Thanks.
To follow Life Matters on all social media, go to lifematters.life, where you will find everything you need to know to share life, culture, and the battle of ideas with everyone you care about. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. Wherever you are in the nation, you can find out more at National Right to Life. You can find vital pro-life information and also find the access to your state and local Right to Life affiliate.